Hey everybody, Willy Kid here. And tonight I thought I would do something fun, something I've been meaning to do for a while, and that's a guitar collection video. I'm a big fan of checking out people's collections here on YouTube, and I thought I would give a little glimpse into my world. Very blessed to have quite a diverse and cool collection of stuff, so I thought I would share it. We'll start off with arguably my favorite guitar and the one that most people would know me for. This is a Danocaster. It's a Danocaster Telly style guitar that I commissioned from new in 2017. I think that's when I received it. It was gold at one time, and this is what thousands of hours with a treasured companion looks like. This is based off of kind of a mid-50s Telecaster. It's an ash body. It's very, very light. It's just a shade over 6 pounds. Has a soft V neck. Not super chunky, but very, very comfortable. It has 6105 frets. The pickups are made by a company called Buds, B-U-D-Z. They're Danocaster's own special proprietary wind, and it's a really fat sounding Telecaster. You can almost get Gibson-ish tones out of it. You can see where the gold has gone nicely green. I do call this guitar Goldie, although that name is becoming less and less relevant as time goes on. But this is my favorite guitar. In my road days, this was the instrument that I took everywhere with me. And although I'm not gigging as much these days, if I get a call to go to a gig and deliver some music anywhere from rock to jazz to country to anything in between, Goldie comes with me. So that's my 2017 Danocaster Goldie. This is a mid-60s, probably a 1964 Gibson Melody Maker. And I got this guitar a number of years ago as a sort of a restoration project. It was covered in stickers. It's been sanded at the heel here. Underneath the cover, which I'll talk about, it was routed for a Kaler, routed for a humbucking pickup. Basically a total basket case. It needed frets. But I really liked the kind of simple punk rock vibe that it had. So eventually, after playing it for a while, I decided to have my buddy Cody Ramsdale refret it, new nut, and we added a 79 Gibson T-top and an original Leo Kwan Badass bridge. It's got a volume and a tone and a what they call a blower switch, so when you flick that, it disconnects all the controls, and it's a really great kind of punky sound. And probably the coolest part about this guitar is the tooled leather wrap that was done by my buddy Willy Stratton in Port Hawkesbury here in Nova Scotia. He does fabulous leather work. And the cool thing, the significance here is my grandfather, who I never met, was David Hansen, but his middle name was Thorvald or Thor. And I never get to meet him, and I always wanted to pay some kind of tribute to him, and he always saw the eagle as a symbol of luck. So I had Willy, with his artistic license, I said, do something with an eagle and pay tribute to my Papa Thor there. So this is all really cool, kind of Elvis meets Waylon Jennings, sort of tooled leather, but with a bit of a punk rock vibe. And at the same time, I had him do a Willy Kid strap for it as well. So this is a great guitar. It's taken a while to get it where I wanted, but it's a lot of fun. Here we've got a 1959 first year Gibson Melody Maker single cutaway model. This particular one is far more original than the one we saw before. I picked this up on a lark locally because you don't really see them too often. This one's got a great chunky 59 neck. It's got the slightly larger fret wire, and it's got the, if the camera can pick it up here, it's got the wider single coil pickup, which is a little more P90-ish than some of the later thin single coils. Kind of, I would say this guitar is very much like if Gibson made an Esquire. You know, it's got a lot of top and a lot of bite, but the volume and tone controls work really effectively in providing a range of tones from clean to mean. It's in really nice shape. I think the only modifications that I know of are a treble bleed on the volume and I replaced the Leo Kwan Badass that it came with aftermarket with the Mojo X compensated tailpiece here, and I believe I put a pair of Tone Pros locking studs just to secure the bridge down. Really, really nice guitar. Again, I love Melody Makers. Miles Goodwin, my dear friend, may he rest in peace. He was a big fan of these. Joan Jett played them. And a little known fact, Gary Moore, during his time with Thin Lizzy, played a 1960 that had a DiMarzio PAF in it, kind of around the time of the Black Rose album. So that's kind of why I have that one. Okay, here is arguably my favorite Gibson guitar. This is a 1959 Gibson Les Paul Jr. double cutaway model in a cherry finish. I've had lots of juniors over the years. I've really loved their simplicity and the ability to get a lot of sounds out of just a very concise setup with the volume and tone and a screaming P90. But the dream for me was always an original model. And I was fortunate to acquire this one in 2020 after wanting one probably since the early 2000s. My pal Fred Mooney was gracious enough to let me have this one. It's pretty cool. When I first got the guitar, you can see there's a lot of cool, honest wear on it, and I assumed that maybe it was owned by somebody in a punk band or something like that, but it was just owned by a gentleman in the Halifax area who bought it new from Buckley's Music back on Gottingen Street in the original days, probably in the early 60s, and it changed hands a few times. It went to my buddy Wayne, and then to Fred, and then to me, where this is the forever home. Cool thing about this guitar is it has a factory black pickguard, which most of them were tortoise, and it's actually quite a bit thicker than the tortoise ones. It's all original other than a Mojo X tailpiece, and I think maybe a couple of frets were changed at one point. Really, really resonant guitar, and whenever I put this thing on, I just think of a lot of my favorite players, Keith Richards, Johnny Thunders, Chris Spedding. There's so many great people who have played Les Paul Jr. over the years, and yeah, original 1959. This is my favorite guitar and really cemented a cool bucket list thing for me to get this one. All right, continuing on the Gibson train, we have my 1971, a very early 1971 Gibson S.G Special. Now, I got this because of Pete Townsend. Of course, he played a very similar guitar on Live at Leeds and at Woodstock. Actually, he had many of these because they were very often smashed or given away or what have you, but Pete really liked them, and I do too. The only caveat with this one that I'm not crazy about is the smaller 1 9/16 nut width. It's a little strange to get used to after the larger necks on all of my other Gibsons, but it's a really cool guitar. I picked this one up a few years ago. It has the original P90s in it, which are pretty chimey sounding as compared to my Junior or some other SGs and Les Pauls that I've owned. Really nice range of tones on the controls there. It's got the original witch hat knobs, which are cool. I do have the original Vibrola in the case, but I took it off because tuning stability mostly. I had this one refretted, and it's got a modern compensated bridge on it, but otherwise all original. Got some honest wear there. Sorry for the reflections, but it plays great, sounds great, and I don't play this one nearly enough, but anytime I take it out, I always enjoy getting my Townsend on. 71 Gibson SG, right before they changed the design to the SG, I believe it was the SG Pro, middle of that year, but this is way cooler. This is the electric I've actually owned the longest. I've owned this guitar for a little over 10 years. I bought it back when I was in music school, and at the time I'd been through numerous Les Pauls, and I really wanted to try a custom shop instrument. And so after trying out a few things and a few adventures and misadventures along the way, I was fortunate to be able to get the money together when I was 19 to buy this 2010 Gibson 57 reissue gold top. Now, it was used when I got it, but it was in immaculate condition. I made short work of that, started playing it right away while I was still in college, and for a long time it was kind of my main guitar. It, like the Telecaster, the Dano, has seen a lot of stages, a lot of recording sessions. And this is one I wasn't afraid to trick out and make my own. So there's not a lot original left. The tuning machines are still original. It hasn't been refretted. I put the vintage inspired pots in here with the paper and oil caps, put in some reflector cap knobs. I had the pick guard signed by Chris Spedding when I met him for the first time. I put a Bigsby on here with the Vibramate because I didn't really want to drill any holes in it. There's a Faber bridge on there, and the pickups are made by a now defunct company called Sanford Magnetics, and these are very kind of like Jimmy Page sounding pickups. I basically at the time said I wanted it to sound like a hopped up Telecaster, and it does that thing really well. And the other cool thing I did more recently was I took the neck pickup out and swapped the magnet over so it's always out of phase in the middle position. Got that trick from hearing players like Earl Hooker and Magic Sam, and more recently people like JD Simo do that trick, and I just think it sounds awesome. Plus, if you want more of the traditional two pickup middle position sound, you just roll the volume off, a little bit, and you can kind of get that flavor too. This one's got a lot of honest wear. You see, it was mint when I got it, but this is a great Les Paul. 2010, 1957, custom shop reissue. Originally ordered from Mark's Guitar Loft in the US, made its way here, and now I've got it, and we'll keep it forever. All right, so those of you who know of the Willy Kid group will recognize this guitar. This is my main stage axe with my power trio. And I've photographed a lot with this and really taken a shining to it. It's not a particularly flashy or expensive guitar. It's a 2006 Gibson 67 reissue Flying V in a faded cherry finish. I've had lots of Flying Vs over the years, and indeed one of my first really good guitars was a 1980s Tokai Flying V from Japan. And I used that a lot when I was really young. And this is kind of, in some ways, my homage to that guitar. That one was also a red one. But I do love the large 67 style Flying V. I've tricked this one out specifically to look like the Flying V that Chris Spedding played in the 70s and 80s. He had a 71 medallion that was modified with just one pickup. But there was also a practicality to it too. When I first got the guitar, it had the two pickups and the regular Flying V controls, but I was always I couldn't get to just the bridge pickup volume when I needed it. So I had Tyson Spinney trick this out with a custom pick guard. The pickup is the one that was in here when I got it, which is a PRS 5708, a PAF style pickup. Initially, I wasn't sure about it. I thought it was kind of toppy, but after messing with the pickup height and just getting used to the guitar, I really think it's a perfect match for this. It's very, very light, and it's the only one that I take some license. It's been thrown around a little bit. I've got my Rolling Stones tongue on there just for fun. And yeah, 2006 Gibson 67 reissue Flying V in faded cherry. Tricked out with one pickup a la Spedding. All right, I think this is the final Gibson Electric as part of my collection. This one I picked up along the way. It's a 2003 Gibson X-Plorer studio model. And astute knowers of this model will know that it's 90% of the size. And I believe it's made of basswood, so it's relatively light. I haven't weighed it, but it's definitely lighter than any of my Les Pauls. Probably a similar weight to my Flying V. It also has mini humbucking pickups like you'd see in a Les Paul Deluxe, and a cool metallic, I think they call it studio green finish. The lighting in the apartment is a little bit dull, so it's definitely got a lot more pop when you're out under stage lights. But yeah, this is one I picked up along the way. I'd never owned an Explorer, and I was kind of curious, but I always found the larger ones a little cumbersome. And I kind of liked the idea of trying something with some mini humbucking pickups. I've had Les Paul Deluxes and things over the years, but this just seemed cool. I always think of Rick Nielsen when I pick up this one. All right, so here's the first of two Guild Starfires that I have in my collection. This particular one is a 1966 Guild Starfire II. The 2, of course, denotes the fact that it has just a regular tailpiece. The other Starfire was the 3, and it had a Guild-branded Bigsby on it. I picked this one up a couple of years ago. I was starting to get more into the idea of trying some hollow body instruments, and this came up available locally. You don't really see old Guilds around on the East Coast all that often, or at least East Coast of Canada, rather. And this one, it's in really nice condition. There's only a little bit of wear on it. Whoever had it before really didn't play it much. And it has these Guild anti-hum pickups, which are, again, kind of a mini humbucking. And they're awesome. They really snarl. And I play a lot of slide on this guitar. I've done a lot of R&B gigs with this. It's very comfortable to play. The neck is a little on the smaller side, but it's nice and it's got a nice depth to it, so it's very comfortable. And yeah, I'm really a big fan of this. Part of my impetus to get this was the cover of the King Controversy album, where Dave Davis is holding a red Starfire III with the Bigsby. I always thought that was a pretty cool look. And it's a little bit of an under-the-radar kind of guitar. You know, everybody's got Gibsons and Gretsches and stuff, and I have those too and love them, but I always have time for these lovely Guild Starfires. Really underrated guitars. Definitely worth checking out. All right, so here is my other Guild Starfire. This is a 1967, so 1 year newer. This is a Starfire XII. And after I got my 6-string, I started to think about, I'd been wanting to add an electric 12-string to the collection for recording and certain things that I was wanting to explore from a musical standpoint. And originally, I think I'd set my sights on a Rickenbacker 12-string, you know, Townsend and George Harrison and all those great players, Roger McGuinn. But then I had found out that Guild actually made a Starfire 12-string, and I'd found a red one in Ontario, but the price was a little prohibitive, and not being able to play it first, I couldn't make it happen. And the guitar ended up selling, but then a short time later, I found this locally, and the gentleman was kind enough to trade me for a Gibson ES125 3/4 that I had. We did a straight swap, which was pretty cool. This one is built a little bit more like a Gibson 335. It does have a center block through it, whereas the red Starfire II that we looked at is fully hollow. It has the same Guild anti-hum pickups in it, same sort of Les Paul Gibson style control layout here, volumes, tones, and a 3-way switch. Again, kind of a narrow neck, especially where it's a 12-string, but that's kind of the style of the time. I think the Rickenbackers and the Gibsons of that period are also fairly narrow. It's still very playable, and you can kind of see where people like Pete Townsend came up with all those cool chord voicings because they had such thin necks to work with. The only downside to some of these Guilds is they use pretty inexpensive tuners on them, so sometimes getting it in tune can be a little bit of a bear. And as we know, with the 12-string, you spend half your time tuning it and half the time playing out of tune. But I quite like this. I use it for recording all the time and writing with. I currently have pyramid flat-wound 12-string guitar strings on here, and I love them. I've actually started using the pyramid strings on some of my guitars. The flat-wounds are really, really fabulous if you want that sort of 60s type sound. So here, yeah, 1967 Guild Starfire 12-string in sunburst finish. All right, continuing on the sort of 60s train, here's my Gretsch. This is a 1964 Chet Atkins model 6120. It's the Lectone body style, the double cutaway. Very similar guitar to the one that I believe John Lennon played on Paperback Writer. I've always liked Gretsches, and I've had numerous modern Japanese Gretsches, which are awesome, by the way. The modern Terada-made ones are really, really well-built guitars, arguably built a little better than these Brooklyn-made ones. But there's a vibe about these old guitars for sure. This one, like I say, is a 64, so it's got the horseshoe logo up here before they went to the Nashville branding. It's got 2 Filtertron pickups, the original Gretsch V-cut Bigsby. This one's a bit of a player's grade guitar. When I got it, thankfully it had been really well refretted, so it plays great. The binding on it is in pretty sorry condition for sure. They all get it to some degree, but this one is not great, admittedly, particularly on that side. But alas, ultimately, I think part of that problem came from it being stored in its original case. So I've dispensed away with that. I have the original case, but I don't use it for anything. This guitar is one that really came alive for me recently when I put pyramid flat wounds on it. Again, I just talked with those in my the segment about the Guild 12 string. And they really just give this guitar a piano-like richness that it didn't have when I had round wounds on it. So this guitar forever will have pyramid flats on it. Plus they last a really long time, so there's no need to change them too often. It's basically got that kind of Beatles in a box thing, and I really quite like it. I had the mud switch disconnected because it wasn't working right, and I mostly live on either the two pickups together or sometimes just the bridge pickups, depending on if I'm doing the Chet Atkins thing or the Beatles thing, or if I want to rock out like Eddie Cochran. 64 Gretsch 6120 Chet Atkins model. All right, so those that know me know I don't really often buy newer guitars, or certainly not brand new guitars. But when I heard about this particular one, I had to have it. It's about a year old. It's a Japanese-made Fender Stratocaster, a reissue of the early 80s International Color series. And this one arguably is the coolest color, graffiti yellow. I had to have this when I saw it. It's instant Jeff Beck vibes. A little bit of a Ritchie Blackmore or Yngwie thing going on too. It's basswood, so it's relatively light. I've seen a few of these. Mine is a little on the heavier side, but still right around 7.5 pounds, which is reasonable. It currently is all stock. I had my buddy David Goodwin set up the bridge to float when I got it, but right now it has the stock pickups. Thinking about putting some noiseless pickups in it, maybe DiMarzio HS3 or like the Duncan Yngwie pickups. Just because I do find that when I play this guitar through my Friedman amp at high volumes, it does tend to squeal quite a bit. Such is the nature of single coils. But it's a really cool Strat. It's a ripper, and I just love this color. And the Made in Japan Fenders are still representing a really awesome value, even if you buy them new, which is pretty cool. 2023 Fender International Colors reissue Stratocaster, big headstock, 3-bolt neck, in, I believe the color is Monaco Yellow. All right, so this is a cool guitar that is one of one. This is made by my friend Tyson Spinney. His company is Helm Guitars, or Helm Custom Guitars. It's a couple of years old. I had received it in a swap. My buddy Jim, he commissioned it, and then I got it from him a couple of years ago when we did some trading. It's a really cool kind of Mosrite meets a Les Paul Custom type thing, and it's got, right now it has two Seymour Duncan P-rails in it. And then I have the mini switches to go between P90, single coil, or humbucking modes. And then it's Danelectro style volume and tone knobs. The color is really what sells this thing. It's a wicked sparkle green that kind of, it almost goes orange in some lighting. It's got a real big neck on it. The sparkle goes all the way around the guitar. It's got Scooby-Doo on the back, so I call it the Mystery Machine. It's not a guitar I play a whole lot, only because it is very bulky, and I do find the P-rails that are in here right now kind of dark sounding. I just wanted pickups that kind of had that Mosrite aesthetic. When I got the guitar, it had a super distortion in it and some kind of Seymour Duncan. And actually, this guitar was used for most of the solos on my forthcoming band record, Large Canadian Classic, albeit with the super distortion still in it. But it's a really fun guitar, and it looks great. And yeah, it's a cool hybrid between a Mosrite and a Gibson Les Paul Custom. All right, now we get to the shredder portion of the show. This was my dream guitar when I was 14, 15. This is an original 1988 Kramer Night Swan, the original first production model, made for Vivian Campbell as a signature model around that time. They, a lot of the ones you'll see have Lightning graphics or Aztec graphics. This one is a black one. It's just a standard black finish. My buddy David Goodwin acquired this a few years ago and was really cool about letting me buy it from him when his time with it was done. The guitar, when he got it, was tricked out with the third pickup here. That's a DiMarzio single coil sized humbucking. That, or a noiseless single coil, I guess, was added. Originally would have had just 2 humbucking sized pickups here and just 1 3-way toggle. The extra switches were added here. And it's a mahogany body, ebony fingerboard with, I believe it's compound radius. It's kind of really low action. It's awesome. Right now for pickups, this is actually just a single coil underneath a cool cover. And that is a Seymour Duncan Jason Becker perpetual burn pickup. And I have basically a volume. I have a toggle, kind of like a Gibson to go bridge, both, or neck. That's a series parallel for the that pickup there. This is out of phase and coil splitting for the middle pickup. And this is actually just a kill switch. So this is a guitar that I love to play a lot. Anytime I want to do the shred thing, this Night Swan comes out. And of course, can't have a Kramer without a Kramer. 1988, original, not a reissue, Kramer Night Swan. All right, so this is the first of 2 Kramer Baretta specials that I'll show you. These are basically the most inexpensive Kramer you can buy, and they are awesome. I was hip to these by, again, my buddy David Goodwin, who is the technician at the local Long McQuaid, and he's really great at hot rodding guitars and coming up with cool ideas to trick out cheap and cheerful stuff. He had picked up a couple of these and showed me a couple of his modified examples, and I was like super interested in getting my hands on one. So I found this one first. It's a purple one. And basically what I did is it's got Planet Waves or D'Addario auto trim locking tuners. I put a Graphtec nut on there as well as Graphtec saddles. This particular one's got a DiMarzio Super Distortion pickup in it, and there's a series parallel switch. The bridge is set up to float. It plays great, it sounds great, and I actually use this a lot. It's a mahogany body with a maple neck. Comfortable neck profile, not too thin. It's not like an Ibanez Wizard. It's more like a, kind of those 80s Kramers or some of the slightly more substantial Charvels, which is more to my liking than the super thin necks. But yeah, these are particularly the Indonesian-made Kramers in these cool colors. Really great value, and they can still be had for not a whole lot of bucks. So this is the first one, the purple Kramer Baretta Special. All right, so first we saw the purple Baretta Special. Now this is the ruby one. I liked that first one so well that I happened to pull this one out of a box, and it was even lighter weight than the first one, so I had to buy it too. This one I've tricked out to be kind of more like my early Alan Holdsworth type guitar. It's got the same auto trim, locking tuners, Graphtec nut and saddles. The bridge is stock. The bridge is okay. Truthfully, you can buy better vibrato bridges, but I really didn't want to sink a lot of money into these projects. This has got an EVH low friction volume pot, and I've got an original mid-80s Seymour Duncan 59, which is a lot like what Alan Holdsworth would have used back in his Charvels, back in kind of the road games, metal fatigue period. And it's just a great guitar. I keep the purple one in E flat. This one is usually in standard tuning. So again, my other Kramer Baretta Special. All right, so this is a cool one. This is I think it's a 64 Airline made by Valco. I believe it's a 7214. It's a little 3/4 short scale guitar. And I bought it because I love these old pawn shop prize type instruments for playing slide and blues music. They're really great character guitars. They're often a little noisy and buzzy, and this particular one is actually out of phase in the middle position, which I adore. Pickups are pretty microphonic, but it sounds awesome. There's a really cool little switch on here, which is actually a sort of tremolo effect. It basically just reduces the volume a little bit when you push down on it. I keep it, I think this also, I believe that the gentleman I purchased this from actually did put pyramid flat wounds on it. And I have the original case for it too. Really nice big neck, but relatively narrow at the nut because I think this was essentially meant to be a children's guitar. But it's a lot of fun, and I'll always have time for these sort of Airline, Harmony, K type catalog, pawn shop, prize, blues axes. So this is, 64 Airline, I believe it's a 7214. All right, so this is a 1967 Harmony H15. I refer to it as a Bobcat. Some people also call them the Silhouette. It's a little short scale guitar, very kind of inspired by like a Fender Mustang or something like that. Really, really cool guitar. And this particular one, a lot of Harmonies are pretty whipped and have high action and don't play all that well. This one was pretty well taken care of. I'm actually only the second owner of this guitar. I bought it from a gentleman in Ontario who had it from new and learned to play on it and kept it in really good shape. It's got some filled finish wear on the side and a little bit of, age on it, but it's pretty cool. This neck pickup in particular is a real screamer. It's kind of like an inverse Telecaster where the neck pickup is the hot one and the bridge pickup is a little bit more quiet and reserved. But you can also blend them however you like with the pickup switch. I don't find the volume and tone controls do very much, so I generally just keep them full up all the time. But yeah, 67 Harmony Bobcat. Only mod that I know of is good repro tuners, and I have the originals in the case. But this is an awesome guitar, and yeah, another great character instrument to add as part of the collection. All right, so this is a cool guitar. One I haven't played in a long time, unfortunately. I need to give it a spa day and get it back into the rotation. It's a 1959, so the first year for this particular model. It's a Harmony-built guitar based on the Stratotone. It would have said Silvertone on some of them here. This particular one happens to be blank. And it's a model 1421. And it's an all-hollow guitar. It's got the silver version of the Diamond gold foil pickups, which is what was in the Bobcat. It's your typical kind of Les Paul style thing with 2 volumes, 2 tones, and a 3-way switch. A really light guitar, really chunky neck. One thing about these Harmonies, the Bobcat before and this particular one, is the neck doesn't really taper as you go up the neck, so it can be a little bit confusing when you're playing up here and the width is the same as what it is down here. That's just how the old Harmonies, most of them anyway, after a point were built that way. This guitar is pretty significant to me and sentimental because it's the guitar that I used on a song called Fish Tank Blues, written and recorded with my pal Miles Goodwin. And it was kind of our introduction to work together. We recorded the song after he had seen a clip of me playing some raunchy, open C slide guitar on this instrument. And he called me and said, hey, let's go into the studio and make some history and make that a song. So, and he said, bring the exact rig you used, which was this guitar, the 59 Silvertone. It's got some miles on it, no pun intended, but it's a lot of fun. I play a lot of slide on this, and I'm looking forward to getting this one back into the rotation. I just recently pulled it out of storage after a long time, put away. 59 Silvertone 1421, made by Harmony. All right, so this guitar is very important to me, and I'll get into the story about it here, but we'll talk a little bit about it first. It's called an RKS Wave, and it's probably from the mid-2000s. Their whole thing with these is that the center section and the outer wings here were interchangeable, so you could swap this outer shell, this polymer shell, for something, a different shape. They had, Flying V type shapes and other things. You would access the wings there. and it's all hollow through here. Your controls are actually, your switch is up there, and the control knobs are down here. It's got 2 lace humbucking pickups, and the neck feels very much like a Fender. It's got this cool mirrored thing on the headstock. But this guitar is very significant because it was a gift from my buddy Miles Goodwin. May he rest in peace. He gave me this from his personal collection not long before he passed away. And I think it's something he had picked up along the way just because he thought it was super cool. And I'm so honored that he thought of me to have this as part of my personal collection. It's very inspiring. The pickups are screamers. I mean, I'm really impressed with the amount of sustain that this guitar has. And that's what Miles had said to me when he presented it to me. I also, at the same time, picked up a cool blue strap to go with it. And I actually have the original hang tag for it too, which is pretty cool. So thank you to my buddy Miles. This is the RKS Wave. Not a very common guitar now. You don't really see them. I think they initially came out in the mid-2000s, and then the Wave model was probably 2007, 2008, something like that, near as I can tell. Really, really cool guitar. And commemoration of a dear friend. All right, so this is a pretty cool guitar. This is probably about a 1981. It's a JK Lado. Lado guitars were made in Ontario. Joe Lado was the craftsperson. I think he started in about 73, and then he's still around today, but the heyday of these things was kind of late 70s, early 80s. You can see it's kind of got a cool BC Rich styling here. It's neck through. It's got Grovers on it. It did have a headstock repair at one time. When I got the guitar, it was kind of a rescue project. It had cheap pickups in it, a cheap bridge, needed fretwork. So I took it to Cody Ramsdale. I had him fix the frets. We put what would have originally been in there, which is a Super Distortion and a DiMarzio PAF. And then I had an original Leo Kwan badass bridge that I put on there. It's a heavy guitar, and yeah, admittedly not one I play a whole lot, but it's a lot of fun. A little bit of a smaller neck on it. But yeah, I pick it up and it just kind of gives me that late 70s sort of hot rod guitar vibe. Probably circa 81, Lado Solo 1 in natural finish. All right, so I do have a couple of basses that I use to write and record with. This particular one is a 98 Dan Electro Longhorn in this really kind of interesting blueburst finish. It's a Korean reissue. It's one of the first ones when they brought Dan Electro back in the 90s. And I got this one off a good buddy of my father's, Roger, who I always used to see this bass hanging at his house when we would go to visit. And I always enjoyed getting to play it because it's a short scale, and later I'd seen footage of John Entwistle playing these, and so I always thought they were super cool. And I had the opportunity to purchase the bass from Roger back in 2018. So it's, again, a kind of a cool commemoration of a friendship sort of thing. He knows it's in a good home, and I try to play it as often as I can. It's nice, it's short scale. I have just D'Addario regular round wounds on this particular one. But I've written a lot of stuff. A lot of the demos and clips I've done that feature a bass have been with this one, the 98 Dan Electro Longhorn. All right, so this is the other bass that I have in my collection. And this, it's a bit of a mongrel, but it's also the coolest thing ever. It's, near as I can tell, probably a 78 or 79 Rickenbacker 4001. And why did I buy it, you ask? It's not every day you see a Rickenbacker with the Union flag painted on it. Not only on the body, but on the headstock as well. It's got a toaster pickup in the neck, so it's got a really nice kind of vintagey sound. I don't know what the back pickup is. I don't think it's a Rickenbacker pickup. I think it's something somebody wound. It's a custom paint job. It's got its share of bumps and bruises, but I have a lot of fun with this thing. I bought it very much as functional art. It's a little bit tougher to play than the Danelectro, but I'm also a guitar player, not really a bass player. So I use this to write with and have fun with. Plus, I mean, just looks great. Now I just need a guitar to match it. Late 70s Rickenbacker 4001 with custom British flag paint job. All right, so I do have a few acoustics as well. This won't be all of the acoustics that I have. I have a few more that are in storage, but these are the ones I have here and arguably the most significant. This is my favorite acoustic guitar. This is, I believe, a 2011 Gibson Blues King. I got this one used around the same time I got my Telecaster, so 2017. It was actually a gift from my mom. And what makes this guitar significant is that it belonged to a gentleman named Lou Duggan. And I think I did a video many years ago on the story behind this guitar. But essentially, Lou was a co-worker of my mother's and an avid musician, played a lot of jazz. And he had owned this guitar from new and treasured it and played it, but then he got very, very sick. I believe it was brain cancer, and could no longer play. He wanted it to go to a good home and contacted my mother because he had, in their chats over the years, she had indicated that her son played guitar, so he figured that I might be interested in it. And she was kind enough, he sold it to us for a very, very good price, and my mother bought it for me, and I only ended up paying for half of it. So I wouldn't have this guitar otherwise, and it's been on a lot of recordings. I've written, probably most of the songs I've written have been on this guitar. It's the only acoustic guitar I think that's on my previous solo album, The Escape Artist. I think other than I used a Harmony Sovereign on one track, but this is a very important guitar, and it kind of gives me that Robert Johnson sort of vibe. It is a blues king after all. So yeah, I want to thank my mom and Lou Duggan for this guitar. Miss Gibson, my 2011 Gibson Blues King acoustic. All right, so this is a 1967 Martin D18, so it's spruce with mahogany. I do love Martin guitars. I've had a history with them. I remember getting to play my Uncle Frank's D45 Martin when I was really young, and it kind of spoiled me from that age on. My grandfather has a D35, which is really nice too, kind of a softer sound. I've always liked the 18s though. The combination of the mahogany with the spruce is just a really rich sound. And this one, like I say, is a 67. I picked it up a few years ago from a gentleman out in the valley. My buddy Adam Fancy and I went on a little guitar safari trip. And I got it and basically took it to the Folklore Center, Tom Dorward here in Halifax, for the Martin prescription. So new, or a neck reset rather, a new bridge because the original Brazilian bridge had been shaved down, bone, nut, and saddle, and the original pickguard was a black one that had curled up under the lacquer and left a crack under it. So we replaced it with the tortoise model. It's very, very light. Has original Grover Rotomatics on it. But it's just a lovely sounding guitar, and I really enjoy playing it. I don't play as much acoustic these days, but when I do, I like to pull this one out, particularly if I'm wanting like an old school country kind of a vibe. I'll use the little Gibson Parlor for playing blues, but if I want kind of an Ernest Tubb, Hank Williams, Hank Snow type of a thing, Johnny Cash, Elvis, etc., this is the one. 1967 Martin D18. All right, so I think this is the last guitar to show you from my collection, and I thank you for sticking around because I imagine this has probably been a pretty long video. This is a pretty unusual guitar to see in Canada. These were a German-made thing. This is a Hofner. This is the Committee, which more or less was their top-of-the-line guitar. Very similar to like a Gibson Super 400 or something. This is a carved spruce top. It's all solid. As you can see there, bird's eye maple on the back and sides. Really huge neck. This one predates having an adjustable truss rod in it. A really cool Hofner tailpiece there. This is, I like these because ultimately those that know me know that I'm a real fan of kind of British music history and the instruments that were used, and a lot of the beat bands and stuff in the UK back in, up until I believe it was June of 1959, you couldn't get American instruments or even records really. So a lot of these bands would make do with different things, Hofners and Igmons and Resonets and things. But this would have been quite a guitar. It has what they call the frondos headstock on it. Beautiful inlay work. This one, unfortunately, has had a pretty nasty neck repair at some point, which made the price relatively reasonable. I actually bought this from a dear friend of mine, Alex McNeil, who is a fabulous musician and songwriter. And he was moving and letting go of some of his instruments. And I made him an offer on this to have it as part of my collection, but also, excuse me, in honor of my buddy Alex. Plus, it's just super cool. So this is, yeah, late 1957 Hofner Committee. I also have an original D'Armond Monkey on a Stick pickup to go with this, but it needs some repair, so I'm going to get that fixed, and then I will fit it to the guitar at some point. Anyhow, thank you for tuning in and watching this probably rather long-winded and self-indulgent, but still hopefully interesting look at the vast majority of the Willy Kid guitar collection. I have some other instruments that aren't here. I have an old Sovereign and a couple of my first guitars from when I was a kid that are just, they're in storage at the moment, so I will chronicle those guitars at another time. But yeah, thank you for watching, and till next time, take care. Cheers.